and welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Matters. I'm Hanis, your host for today. I'm really happy that you have decided to join us wherever you are right now. Maybe you are walking to class, sitting in the library, or just relaxing in your room after a long day. Today, we are talking about something that is very close to many students, which is student well-being and mental health. Every day, we see friends who seem completely fine. They attend lectures, submit assignments, smile, and laugh with everyone around them. But behind all of that, many students are quietly dealing with stress, anxiety, and burnout. Today, we want to talk openly about why this happened and, more importantly, how we can support one another. Joining me today are two amazing guests, Zahira and Aini.
Hello, Hanis. Thank you for inviting me. Honestly, I'm really glad we are having this conversation. Student stress today isn't something that only happens during exam week anymore. It feels like it's there all the time. You finish one assignment, and before you can even relax, you are already thinking about the next one.
Yes, exactly. We feel like we are always busy and always rushing. There hardly any separation between study life and personal life anymore. Your room isn't just a place to sleep. It becomes your classroom, your study area, and sometimes even the place where you worry about everything.
That's true, Aini. And the pressure comes from so many directions. There are assignments, money problems, relationships, family expectations, and worries about the future. But what concerns me the most is how lonely many students feel. A lot of students think they are the only ones struggling, while everyone else seems to be doing perfectly fine.
Yes, I think many of us can relate to that. We look at other people and think, wow, they have everything under control. Their notes are perfect, they manage their time well, and they seem so confident. At the same time, we might be struggling just to get out of bed and attend an 8 a.m. class.
That's so true, Hanis, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion. For me, mental health is not just a popular topic that people talk about once in a while. It affects everything. It affects how we learn, how we communicate with others, how motivated we feel, and even our physical health.
It's really affect your energy every day, doesn't it?
Exactly. When your mind is already full of worry and stress, it becomes very difficult to focus. You can sit in a lecture hall for 2 hours, but your mind is somewhere else. Nothing really goes in. That's why conversations like this are so important. We need to remind ourselves that feeling overwhelmed does not mean we are weak. Feeling tired under a lot pressure does not mean there is something wrong with us. It simply means we are human and sometimes we need rest and support.
You know, it's actually quite interesting, but also a little sad. Today, we see mental health campaigns everywhere. There are posters around campus, online talks, workshops, and even wellness apps. But even with all this awareness, more and more students seems to be dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression. So, from your point of view, what do you think is causing this? Why are so many students struggling?
I think one of the biggest reasons is that the expectation placed on students today are extremely high. If we listen to stories from our parents or lecturers about the university day, life seems much simpler. The usual path was straightforward. You attend classes, study hard, graduated, and then look for a job. But today, things we are very different. Having a degree is no longer enough on its own. It has become the basic requirement.
I completely agree with you, Aini. The expectation keeps getting higher and higher. Sometimes it feels like students are expected to be fully prepared professionals before they even graduate.
Exactly. Students today are expected to do much more than just get good grades. You are expected to join clubs, hold leadership positions, take part in competition, complete internship, build your professional profile online, and prepare for a very competitive job market. And on top of all that, many students also work part-time job because living costs keep increasing. Trying to balance all these responsibilities at the same time can be very exhausting.
That's true, Aini. When you look at student schedule nowadays, it can feel more like a full-time job than a learning experience. Sometimes we become so focused on building the perfect future that we forget to enjoy learning process itself.
And I think that mindset creates a very competitive environment because everyone is trying to achieve similar goals. Students sometimes start comparing themselves to one another. Instead of seeing classmates as friends, we start seeing them as competition. And because of that, it becomes really difficult to appreciate our own achievements. For example, imagine spending weeks preparing for an exam. You work really hard for it and eventually you get an A. But instead of celebrating, you immediately start worrying about the next assignment or the next test.
Exactly. The feeling of happiness only lasts for a few minutes. Then your brain immediately move on to the next thing you need to do.
Yes, instead of feeling proud, you start thinking, okay, what's next? Or what if I can get the same result next time? Over time, it feels like nothing you do is ever enough.
That is really important point, Zahira. When we start appreciating our own progress, it becomes much easier to feel stressed and dissatisfied. And then social media makes everything even harder. What role do you think social media play in student stress today?
I think social media has a huge impact. Apps like Instagram and TikTok can be useful, but they also make it very easy to compare ourselves with other people. Every time we open our phones, we see someone achieving something. Maybe someone gets a scholarship, maybe someone wins a competition, maybe someone starts a business or travels overseas. If you are already feeling stressed, seeing all of that can make you feel like you are falling behind.
And the problem is that we often forget that social media only show the best parts of someone's life. We see the success, but we don't see the struggles behind it.
We only see the final result, not the journey.
That's true. We don't see the failures, the rejection, the sleepless nights, or the moment when they doubted themselves. When we compare our everyday struggles with someone else's highlight reel, it's very to feel bad about ourselves.
I can definitely relate to that. There were times when I was already tired from studying. I opened social media and just to relax for a few minutes. But then I saw people posting about their projects, achievement, or late night study sessions. Instead of feeling relaxed, I start feeling guilty for taking a break.
And that's what people often call toxic productivity. It's the idea that if we are not constantly doing something productive, then we are wasting time. We start believing that resting is a bad thing.
Yes, Zahira, it feels like we are running a race that never ends. No matter how much we achieve, there's always something else waiting. But what we need to remember is that everyone has their own journey. Everyone moves a different pace. Just because someone reached a goal before you does not mean you have failed. It simply means your pace is different.
I completely agree. Someone else's success does not take away your opportunity to succeed. Now that we have talked about some of the reasons behind student stress, let's move on to something important. How can students tell the difference between normal academic stress and serious burnout that may affect their well-being? In university life, the word stress is something we hear almost every day. Sometimes it even becomes part of a normal conversation. You ask someone how they are doing, and they reply, I'm stressed. Everyone laughs, and then the conversation moves on. But there is actually a big difference between normal stress and serious burnout. Normal stress can help motivate us to finish a task or prepare for an exam. Burnout, however, is much more serious and can affect our health and daily life. So, what are some warning signs that students should pay attention to, Aini?
One of the biggest warning signs is extreme tiredness or burnout, and this is very different from the normal tiredness and you feel after a busy day. Usually, if you're tired, a good night's sleep can help you refresh again. But with burnout, even after sleeping for many hours, you still wake up feeling exhausted. You feel tired physically, mentally, and emotionally. It can feel like your energy is completely gone.
That is such an important point, Aini. What worries me the most is that many students think this level of exhaustion is normal. Sometimes people even treat it like an achievement.
That's true, Zahira. It almost becomes a competition. One student said, I only slept 4 hours last night. Then another person will reply, 4 hours, I only slept 2.
Exactly. People talk about lack of sleep as if something to be proud of, but honestly, being constantly exhausted is not a sign of success. It's actually a warning sign that your body and mind need rest.
I can definitely relate to that. When I first started university, I thought staying up all night was part of being a hardworking student. But after a while, I realized that the less sleep I got, the harder it became to focus and remember things. My productivity actually became worse. Besides feeling tired all the time, what other wrong signs should students look out for?
Another common sign is difficulty focusing. You sit down to study, open your laptop, and try to start your work, but somehow nothing happens. You stare at the screen for a long time. You read the same paragraph again and again, but you still cannot understand it. It feels like your brain is full and unable to process any more information.
And sadly, many students blame themselves when that's happened. They immediately think, why am I so lazy? Why can't I focus? And what's wrong with me? But often, the problem isn't laziness at all. Their brain is simply exhausted after dealing with stress for a long period of time.
True, there is a big difference between laziness and burnout. When you are being lazy, you usually have the energy to do the task, but you choose not to do it. With burnout, you actually want to do the work. You care about your assignments and deadlines, but you are so mentally exhausted that you struggle to function properly.
That's right. Another warning sign is withdrawing from other people. Maybe you have a friend who is usually active, friendly, and involved in many activities. Then suddenly they stop replying to messages, they stop attending classes, and they stop joining group activities. And they seem to despair from everyone around them.
It's like they suddenly go quiet.
Yes, and many times it's not because they don't care, it's because they are emotionally drained. When someone is dealing with anxiety or depression, even simple social interaction can feel exhausting. Sometimes they isolate themselves because they don't have the energy to pretend that everything is okay.
That's such an important reminder, Aini. Many people think mental health struggles are always obvious, but that's not always true. Sometimes the person who is struggling the most still attend classes, submit assignments, and smile at everyone.
Exactly. Some people become very good at hiding her struggles. From the outside, everything looks fine, but inside, they are fighting a difficult battle every single day.
And that's why we need to pay attention to people around us. We shouldn't wait for them to openly ask for help. Sometimes a simple message can make a huge difference. You could send a text saying, hey, I have noticed you have been a bit quiet lately. I just want to check if you are okay. No pressure to reply, but I'm here if you need someone to talk to. That small gesture can mean a lot to someone who feels alone.
I really like that. It's simple, caring, and doesn't put pressure on the other person. And I think it's good reminder that support doesn't always have to be something big. Sometimes just letting someone know that they are not alone and can make a huge difference. Now that we have talked about the warning sign, let's move into something more personal. I think many listeners can learn from real experiences. So in our next segment, we are going to share some of our own stories and challenge with stress and mental health during university life. It's always easy to talk about mental health using facts, theories, and definitions. But sometimes real stories have a much stronger impact. When people share their own experience, it reminds us that we are not alone. So Zahira, if you are comfortable sharing, can you tell us about a time when the pressure became too much for you?
Yes, of course. This happened last semester, and honestly, even thinking about it now still makes me feel a little emotional. Looking back, the warning signs were already there, but I ignored them. At that time, I had a major research paper to complete, a group presentation that carried a lot of marks, and several quizzes happening in the same 2 weeks. I'm the type of person who likes to handle things on my own. I didn't want people to think I couldn't manage my work. So instead of asking for help, I pushed myself harder. I stayed up late almost every night, drank far too much coffee, and kept telling myself that I just need to work a little harder.
That's already sound exhausting.
It really was. Then one afternoon, I was sitting in the library trying to finish my work. Suddenly, my chest felt very tight. My heart started beating really fast. My hands were shaking. At that moment, I had a panic attack. I had never experienced anything like that before. My body was basically telling me that I had pushed myself too far. And the sad part was that after all those sleepless nights, I still struggled during my exam because I was so exhausted. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't remember things that I had studied. The experience taught me a very important lesson. No matter how determined we are, we all have limits. If we ignore those limits for too long, our body will eventually force us to stop.
Thank you for sharing that, Zahira. I know it's not always easy to talk about experience like that. And I think many students listening right now can relate to what you went through. Sometimes we treat sleep, rest, and self-care as things are not important, but eventually our body reminds us that they are necessary. What about you, Aini? Was there a moment when stress really affected you?
Yes, there was. For me, it happened during my final exam last year. The stress did not show up as a panic attack. Instead, it affects my daily life in way I did not expect. I constantly feel sick. I woke up every morning with a knot in my stomach. But the strangest thing was that I started struggling with very simple decisions.
Simple decision? What do you mean by that, Aini?
For example, one morning I was getting ready for class. I opened my wardrobe and tried to decide what shirt to wear. Normally, that would take a few seconds. But one day, I stood there for almost 15 minutes. I could not decide. And then, out of nowhere, I started crying. I was overwhelmed by something as simple as choosing between two shirts.
Wow, so even a small decision felt overwhelming?
Exactly. Looking back, it sounds strange, but at that time, my mind was already crying, so much stress that I could not handle one more thing. That moment made me realize that stress does not only affect your studies, it affects every part of your life.
And I think that's also when self-doubt starts becoming stronger. When you are exhausted, it's easier to question yourself. You start thinking, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I don't belong here, or maybe everyone else is doing better than me.
Yes, and that's exactly how imposter syndrome works. You start believing that everyone around you is confident and successful while you are the only person struggling. Even when you are doing well, you still feel like you do not deserve your achievement.
It's amazing how stress can change the way we see ourselves. It can make us believe things are not actually true. And honestly, I have experienced something similar too. Last year, I had to complete a major research assignment. The assignment was very important and I want to be perfect. But because I want everything to be perfect, I couldn't get started. I would open my laptop, stare at blank document, and spend hours thinking about the first sentences. I kept telling myself that every paragraph had to be excellent. And because I was so worried about making mistakes, I ended up writing almost nothing.
Honestly, that's surprising to hear. You are one of the most confident and capable people I know, Hanis.
Thank you, Zahira. But I think that's exactly the point. Stress can affect anyone. It doesn't matter how confident, talented, or hardworking you are. There are times where everyone struggles. And during that period, I felt stuck. I felt frustrated with myself because I knew what I want to do, but I couldn't move forward.
I think many students can relate to that, especially students who put a lot of pressure on themselves. Sometimes we expect perfection, and that expectations stop us from making progress.
Exactly. We become so focused on doing something perfectly that we forget that making progress is more important. And after listening to both of you stories, I realized something. Even though our experiences were different, we all felt the same thing. We felt overwhelmed, we felt pressured, and at the time, we felt completely alone.
That's true, and the reality is many students are feeling the same way. The difference is that most people don't talk about it. They keep everything inside because they don't want others to worry about them or judge them.
Which is why conversations like this are so important. When students hear a story like this, they realize they are not the only ones struggling. They realize that other people have gone through similar experience too, and that can be very comforting.
I completely agree with you, Aini. Sometimes hearing someone else's story can make us feel less alone. And that brings us to an important question. If so many students are struggling, why do so few of them seek help? In our next segment, we are going to talk about a mental health stigma and why students are still afraid to reach out for support. Most universities today provide counseling services and mental health support for their students. We often see posters, announcements, and campaigns encouraging students to get help when they need it. But even with all these resources available, many students still choose not to seek professional support. Why do you think that happens?
I think one of the biggest reasons is fear of being judged. Even though people talk more openly about mental health now, there is still some stigma surrounding it. Many students worry that if others find out they are seeing a counselor, they will be seen as weak or unable to handle pressure. Some students are also afraid that people might think something is seriously wrong with them.
Yes, I think that fear of being labeled can stop people from asking for help.
I agree with you, Hanis. Another reason is that some students grow up in environments where mental health is not openly discussed. When they finally tell someone about their struggles, they may hear comments like, "You are just tired. Everyone goes through this. Just stay positive and you will be fine."
Yes, and although those comments may not be meant to hurt anyone, they can make a person feel like their struggles are not important.
That's true. After hearing those kinds of response, many students start doubting themselves. They begin to think, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm just weak, maybe I should keep this to myself. And because of that, they stop talking about what they are going through.
And that's where the real problem begins. Keeping everything inside can make the situation even harder. We need to remember that stress, anxiety, and burnout are not signs of weakness. They are normal human response to difficult situations. Anyone can experience them.
That's such an important point. I always think about it this way. If someone break their leg, nobody tell them to ignore it and keep walking. People encourage them to see a doctor and get treatment. But when someone is struggling emotionally or mentally, they are often taught to just be strong and deal with it on their own. Why do we treat mental health differently from physical health?
Exactly, mental health deserves the same level of care and attention. Seeking help from a counselor does not mean you have failed. In fact, it takes courage to admit that you need support. Sometimes, asking for help is one of the strongest things a person can do.
Oh, that's a meaningful conversation this has been. We have talked about stress, burnout, mental health challenge, support system, and ways students can take better care of themselves. Before we end today's episode, I would like to ask both of you to share one final message to our listener. Zahira, let's start with you.
Thank you, Hanis. If there is one thing I want everyone listening to remember is this. Your value as a person is not determined by your grades, your CGPA, or the number of your achievement on your resume. Those things may be important, but they do not define who you are. You are more than your academic results. Please remember to take care of yourself and treat yourself with kindness. Your well-being matters just as much as your success.
That's a really important reminder. Thank you, Zahira. And Aini, what would you like to share with our listener?
My message is simple. You do not have to go through difficult time alone. Many students think they all have to solve every problem by themselves, but it's not true. If you are struggling, please reach out to someone you trust. Talk to a friend, a family member, a lecturer, or a counselor. There are people who care about you and want to support you. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it takes courage. And sometimes one conversation can make a huge difference.
Thank you so much for having us, Hanis. I really enjoyed this conversation. And to everyone listening, please remember to get enough rest tonight and take care of yourself.
Thank you, everyone. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and do not be afraid to reach out when things get difficult. Take care and stay safe.
And thank you to all of you for listening to today's episode of Mental Health Matters. We hope this conversation has helped you feel a little more understood and little less alone. Until next time, take care of yourself, look after one another, and remember that your mental health matters. Goodbye, everyone. See you in the next episode.